Hey folks, Joe Valley here from Quiet Light Brokerage. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Quiet Light podcast. Today we have an incredibly special guest. In fact, I think it's probably the most important guest that we've ever had on the show today. Wouldn't you agree, Mark?
I love my new role as moving to guest status.
Wait a minute. I thought I was the guest. Myself. I was talking
Well, you're
about
always
myself.
hosting the show these days. I haven't been able to get an episode in because you've been hosting so many episodes. You are the guest, and I'm filling in.
That's
hello, folks. This is Mark Duff. I'm filling in for Joe Valley today for the Quiet Light podcast. And today we have an awesome guest, Joe Valley.
Mark's taking a break from raising his 18 children to host a podcast.
I'm just waiting for the TLC show coming out soon. 18 kids. Yes, Joe, we have you on. We have you on for a reason, because you have just finished. I shouldn't say you just finished. You finished a few months ago, but we're getting close. We're ramping up pretty quickly to the launch of a book, your new book that you have spent.
Can you remember the name of it?
It was buy then sell or build then sell.
Buy then build. Buy then build.
Buy then build. No, we're not going to.
Buy then build 2 by Joe Valley. No, I'm kidding. I'm no Walker Dive.
Walker's book. No. The name of your book, the EXITpreneur's Playbook. It's a distillation of all the things that you've been telling people for years at Quiet Light, as far as how to plan your exit and put it into book form. Did I say that right?
That was the use of the word distillation was very, very impressive, by the way. I'm going to write that down and try to work it into the next conversation I have in the next 24 hours. Very good. Yes, it is. Except that, what I'm trying to do is get away from the word plan. At one point I said, I never want to use the word exit because people get, the willies thinking about exit and planning. And here I have the word exit in the title of the book. But it's we use Playbook and there's a lot of sports analogies and training. The reality is that if you're going to run a marathon, a triathlon, a 5K, whatever it might be, you can get up and you might be able to run it. You might be able to finish it, but it's going to be pretty ugly and painful. And the recovery period is going to be pretty rough. And it's the same when somebody exits their business. They can go ahead and do it, wake up and decide to sell instead of, training for that exit. It's just going to be more painful. And so, yes, this book is a distillation, there you go, of all of the conversations. And I've had 8,000 one-on-one conversations. I did the math on this recently, and I think it's really a conservative number because I had a lot of conversations early on in the first 5-6 years, one-on-one conversations with entrepreneurs. And the reality is, Mark, that you and I could sit down with an entrepreneur for hours talking about what we do and what they need to do to prepare their business for sale and what buyers like and what they fear. And only a certain amount of it would get absorbed and only a certain amount could get across in 2 or 3 hours. So I put it all in a book. I've taken everything we've done for the last 14 years and, it's there, it's in writing. It's everything that we do on steroids. And it's as an incredible author says, it's the ultimate guide to selling your online business. Thank you, Walker Dive. That was the incredible author. We do have some really good quotes, though. Let me just read one. This is a must read for online entrepreneurs. The EXITpreneur's Playbook provides powerful, clear, and easy to read information to help you understand the value of your most valuable asset, your business. And that, my friends, is Gino Wickman, author of Traction, founder of EOS, after he read the book. So it's exciting. I'm pleased that it's finally in print form, and will launch on June 15th.
Yeah, this is actually really exciting, and we joke about Walker all the time, but we can't actually joke too much because he's sold how many books now? Like 30,000 or something of Buy Then Build. Maybe not that many, but it's a lot.
No, more than that. As I think that was at the end of 2020, and he's topped that by a large number.
Yeah, he's only gaining momentum with that. And the fact is, the reason that people have gravitated towards that book is because it's genuinely helpful. And you said 8,000 conversations. That's a ton. But I'll tell you an inside secret. This inside secret about Quiet Light Brokerage. We measure our value. We track a metric internally of how many conversations are we having? How many quality conversations are we having? We see a lot of value in that because those conversations are where we get to hopefully teach and instruct for the purpose of an exit. And I love that you bring up, people don't like that word. And when we go to conferences and display and people see what we do, there are people that actually get a little worried when they see us and they think, oh, I don't want to sell my business. It's okay. You don't have to. We're not going to sell your business without you.
Yeah.
But having that plan and understanding that you might have a very good business right now. And if you do that, that's awesome. An exit is most likely in your future at some point in time. And how can you craft that exit in a way that actually suits your goals and maximizes the value? There is strategy to that. That doesn't have to take over your business strategy. And your book is called The EXITpreneur's Playbook, right? It speaks to the strategies involved there of doing this. So let's actually start out. If you haven't picked up on this, folks, yet, I am filling in as the host for Joe Valley since he is now a guest. I'm going to ask Joe some questions, rapid fire questions here, and just kind of get some insight into the book, into what people can expect from this book, and why it might be worth reading. Even if you have been loyal listeners to the Quiet Life podcast, read a lot of our materials, I think this book is going to be really, really valuable. So let's start at the very beginning. What led you to writing this book in the first place? It's a lot of work. I know Chris Moore, our CMO, has asked me to write a book, and I said, no, I have zero desire to do so. And you thought, I can spend 18 months doing that. What led you to write the book and start putting this down on paper?
A couple of different things. I mean, there's a lot of delicacy that goes into the conversations about someone's business and learning about it and trying to share the right information with that particular individual. And that's hard, 8,000 times, one at a time. It's exhausting. And I know even with the effort I made, I'm not reaching everyone that truly needs to be reached. If you think about it, it's a small industry, right? So let's just say that I'm 1%. I'm talking to 1% of the total possible people that need information about this book. That means that there's another 800,000 or so that could have one-on-one conversations, but they might be afraid to talk to a broker because there's a stigma, because I don't want to sell my business, or I don't want to be talked into selling my business. And that's not what we do. When you and I first talked back in 2010, you gave me some advice that was in my best interest. And I went ahead and took that advice and came back later and sold my business for a higher value because of it. And so that's, what we do. And the purpose of it is to not just reach the other 800,000. It's actually to reach more than that. The goal personally for me is to sell 1 million books over the next decade. Because I even think that's a fraction of the online entrepreneurs that could use it. But the information is so overwhelming and confusing. It's second nature to you and me, but it's still complicated. I was on a podcast, and this was one of the things that triggered me to think, I got to write this. I got to write this stuff down. We've done it on the website. It's in bits and pieces all over the place, but I wanted it to be in one particular spot. So I was a guest on a podcast. The gentleman was a high-level Amazon seller, and he also had a podcast. And we were talking about sellers' discretionary earnings. And, I went through the process of explaining it and then what it works and how talking about ad backs and all this other stuff. And then towards the end of the recording, he went and tried to repeat and reiterate what I said, reinforcing it. And he got it completely wrong. It was just misinformation given out to his entire audience. And I had to, awkwardly, correct him. And I realized at that point how incredibly confusing it was for the entrepreneur to hear it over a phone call with us and some in writing. It's like drinking through a fire hose, and it's just way too much. So I laid it all out. It's in writing. And honestly, I learned a tremendous amount from it. Right? You can learn a lot from reading a book, but let me tell you learn a lot more from writing one. I was able to take everything that we do, blow it up, separate it out, put it back together in a sequential process. So anyone that owns an online business can think about the entire process from when they decide, okay, I might want to sell my business someday, and they can go through the book and look at the entire process from beginning to end, along with hearing success stories from myself personally. I've had some successes and I've had some epic failures that I talk about in there. And then with clients that we've had as well, I do change everyone's name just for the record. We're not calling anybody out in the book, but it's there as a reference guide so that anybody can look at it. It's great for buyers too, I would say, as well as sellers.
Well, I have a number of questions to go off of with that. But first of all, I just want to say one thing I think is really good about the book are the actual examples. Bringing things from theory, from concept and rules down to here's how it actually plays out in real life. Because I think there's a disconnect for an entrepreneur. And I know when I was selling my business, I didn't believe that I was actually selling my business until that money hit the account.
Yeah.
It's all very unbelievable when you go through that process. It feels very remote. And I think there's a lot of hopes. And so for myself, I guarded myself the entire time saying, well, I kept telling my wife, I said, I'll believe it when the money hits the account. Until then, I'm owning this business. And so hearing some of the advice that is given, you should be doing X, Y, or Z. It's one thing to hear it. And then it's the second thing to see, oh, this added this much value to so-and-so's business. And those examples are really, really good. And I'm going to ask you a question about that in a bit, but I want to go back because you said you learned a few lessons from writing the book. What are some of the lessons that you learned?
Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Now you're going to call me out and make me try to recall those lessons.
One of those lessons, don't write a book?
Definitely don't write a book. Oh, gosh. I've always had the one-on-one conversations and they're always geared towards that owner of the business. And so, I'm not pulling everything in and sharing everything with them. And one of the things that I've talked about for a while, and you've heard me say, and people in the podcast might have heard me say, the deep dive into ad backs. And I used to have 3 different levels of ad backs. And, occasionally I did this in webinar presentations, but I've detailed that tremendously and separated them out into 3 different levels, some that should be fairly obvious, some that they're not so obvious, and others that you really have to do a deep dive and focus. And what I learned in that process is that none of it is simple, none of it is clean, and none of it is going to be applicable to every single business. So having all of that information so that a buyer could look at it and say, wow, that broker didn't do that ad back. There's some instant equity for me. Or a seller that just got an offer from an aggregator that didn't do their own ad back schedule, they can really just put that in there and increase the value of their business. There's so much that I've learned in the process, Mark. I really couldn't encapsulate all of it other than it is, yes, incredibly hard to write a book. It needed to be done because there's nothing else out there like it. And the objective of it is to give everyone that picks the book up and reads it what's in my head, your head, Chuck's head, Jason's head, Amanda's head, everybody that we've worked with over the last decade and everything that we've learned and sharing it with them just to make, their success better, either as a buyer or a seller.
Something that you mentioned, there's this concept of instant equity. And I want to provide a little bit of background on this and then ask you about this because when you're dealing with Main Street businesses and even lower middle market businesses in terms of the valuation that they receive, so the size of the business, we're talking about the ones that QuietLight typically represents. The approach that's expected is to name an asking price. And naming that asking price means that you have to have a fairly accurate valuation. And that valuation is supposed to anticipate what buyers are going to be willing to pay. But if you make a mistake with that valuation, if you use a wrong basis of accounting, if you don't get the add backs right, if you miss something significant in there, what happens? Buyers gain instant equity. And buyers aren't going to come to you and say, you missed this. Let me offer you a couple extra $100,000 for this.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
So I want to ask you a little bit about this idea of when you're going through here, the nuance that you may have found in going through the ad backs. I want to ask you about one thing that may have surprised you during that process. As you were thinking about this and starting to dissect it and try and put it into a format that's easy for people to understand, digest, and read, and in a book format, what surprised you with maybe some of the nuance from how you've presented it in webinars? And I'm totally putting you on the spot again here.
Yeah, that in the past in webinars, it was probably very confusing. There just wasn't enough time to give enough detail. And you know, you can convey so much more in a conversation, but there's only a minute amount of time on a call. Here I could get, you know, deep into the weeds, and I tell people, look, some of this is, you know, it's got the potential to make your eyes bleed, but you will certainly make a lot more money doing a proper ad back schedule when you sell your business than you will launching that next SKU. It's a lot less risky to really firm up your true seller's discretionary earnings so that you understand how close or how far you are from your goal. So I said, you know, I think what I learned is that you got to get, you know, on a short presentation like a webinar, an AMA, or anything like that, you've got to be general, broad. Here, I was able to dig, you know, deeper into the details of it, from, you know, the 18 different types of ad backs that cover most things, but still in many ways scratches the surface. You know, getting into valuation multiples, roll-ups, what's happening with that aggregators, tracking key financial metrics. It just, you and I have talked about this for a decade, that we as Quiet Light should have a document that takes the seller from all the way from A to Z. This is the process you can expect, you know, what you're going to go through over the next 90 days. This actually does that, but then, you know, gives you some, you know, 12 months of prior preparation that you might want to consider as well. It's just as broad and deep as I could possibly go, while keeping it, you know, somebody said to me recently, it's the way it's written is just, you know, they're sitting across from me at a pub having a beer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what I'm excited about with this, like you said, there's nothing out there on the market like this, right? You aren't going to find books that are addressing the online business space like we work in that talk about the exits. I heard recently from a course I'm taking, in which the founder and the instructor in the course said there are really no original business books out these days. They're all just repackaging of other materials that are combined into something new. And I'm actually experiencing that right now. I'm reading Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg, which is the foundation for what was in Atomic Habits. Tiny Habits, Atomic Habits, same sort of concept, and a lot of the play there. Yeah, I see the similarities in all of these different things. But this one is unique in that no one's really addressed this in book format. We have a lot of blog materials. I've written enough to fill a book, but not organized in the proper way to make a book. When I have read through your book, and as you know, I haven't read through the whole thing. I've scanned through it. I've been able to pick up on certain things. I like the fact that you're rolling in these examples. I think it'd be really cool to just talk about like one of the examples and the takeaways that you were able to generate from that. Out of all the examples that you were able to pull on, real people's stories where their names were changed, what's one that you might be able to share and kind of tease out here?
Yeah, there's so many of them. And let me just say, one of the things that I had planned on doing with the book, prior to beginning to write it, I outlined it, but then the concept was that I was going to give, you know, material on the subject matter of selling in one chapter. The next chapter was going to be a full interview with somebody that had sold their business and what they went through to get that in there. It was just going to end up being too much. So there's little excerpts throughout the book with those same people and those same stories. So Jeremy comes to mind. Jeremy was in the corporate world, making six figures. His wife was a teacher, and he was just miserable. They just had a little boy, and it was summertime. So she was at home because she was a teacher, but he was still, you know, getting up and working, you know, 10 hours a day for the man, if you will. They sat down, figured out what they wanted to do. He launched an Amazon business, and his goal was to eventually sell. He thought ahead of time, the way that I can probably make money off of this is to sell. So he reached out to me about 12 months in and said, look, this is my goal. I want to X for $1 million. And we went through his P&Ls, went through his SKU count and growth and things of that nature, and figured he had at least another 12 months left before we get that $1 million mark. Exactly 12 months he came. We listed the business, sold it under LOI, and closed within about 45 days. It was pretty quick because it was a very attractive business. And he got $1 million out of it. And when you do the math on that, he wasn't, because of the growth, he wasn't able to take any money out of the business, right? Because he was putting all that money back in inventory. He initially launched it with money from a home equity loan. So he risked some there. He had some savings, but they lived off his wife's teacher salary for 2 years, which we both know is not very much. But doing the math on all of that, he made, he went from $100,000 a year in the personal tax bracket to $500,000 a year in the capital gains tax bracket, which is much lower. He was able to come and go as he pleased. He was able to be around and be a stay-at-home dad, be there for his wife. And now he's got a whole bunch of money in the bank, and knowledge is the most important thing. He's got peace of mind and knowledge and experience to do it again if and when he chooses to. And he's actually done that. He's gone off and built his next business, and he will eventually have another exit that will be bigger and more peaceful and calm because he's been there and he's done that before already.
One of the things I like about the title of the book is it sets up this idea of exiting as not a career path, but as an entrepreneurial activity. And we've had the benefit of working with some people who have had multiple exits. We've had worked with people who have bought and then years later are selling the same businesses that they acquired. Is this one of the hopes of the book that you have, is to teach people how to do this? And is this something that you think people should consider who are in business ownership right now, is looking at this as maybe the path that they take for their entrepreneurial life?
Yeah, without question, because the reality is that the business that they're operating is probably their most valuable asset. If it's a physical products business and they're just trying to keep up with inventory, they're not taking a whole lot of cash out. Most of the money, at least 51%, and most of the time 80 to 90%, is in the exit. So they'll bootstrap that business, they'll scramble, they'll run hard for 2 or 3 years, and they don't have a whole lot out of it. And the best way to get the most value in cash is exit. Now they can do it again, do it wiser, smarter, better financed, have no debt or have money in the bank, and always have a plan. So, I've talked to some people that they absolutely look at this as a business plan. They start one, they get it up and running. 12 months in, they start the next. After another 12 months, they're going to sell that first one, and then they're going to send the second one. So every 12 months, they're going to have an exit. It's almost like an exit treadmill, so to speak. They're just going to stay on that treadmill and peel a new business off every 12 months. Interesting concept. They haven't pulled it off yet, but we have many clients who have sold multiple businesses with us.
Yeah, and I think one of the advantages of doing that is de-risking your entrepreneurial career, right? As you grow a business and as you go through the different iterations, different demands are needed of businesses as they grow, and different skill sets. And I think one of the most, one of the most common questions we get from buyers is, why are they selling? And if we analyze why are people selling, a lot of times the reasons people sell are because they get to that point where that next iteration, I don't know if I want to do that. That next iteration means I have to go from running this business out of my garage with my son, where we, send out orders twice a week and it's really fun, to I'm going to have to get an office and start to hire some people. And I kind of don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So what this does, this idea of having these rotating exits, it can de-risk some of those changes that you would otherwise have to take on. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't take them on. It doesn't mean that somebody shouldn't say, hey, this is the path I want to take. But I think this is one of the reasons a lot of people go this way. I like the idea that you have here with the EXITpreneur's Playbook, which is the idea to plan for this so that you can de-risk what you've built, right? Like you said, your business is the most valuable asset that you have, most likely.
Most likely.
And so exiting, pulling that value out, means that you are now cashing in, you're getting that reward, and you're no longer subjecting it to you making a bad decision with your business and destroying the value of the business. I don't know if I'm taking over your motivations for the book here or not. I'm just kind of riffing on the general concept.
No, Brian and Janine, who, they're in the book, they gave me a nice endorsement in it. And I do talk about their story a little bit, and I don't change their names. They had a business that was about 3 years old, that was tracking on, 5 million in total revenue in that calendar year that we sold it, or that trailing 12 months that we sold it. but they just kept throwing money at inventory. So they had a business doing 5 million a year in revenue. And that people think about that and they're like, my goodness, I'm going to get to keep 20% of that. That's amazing. That's not the case. They had $600,000 worth in inventory, and it kept, Janine said that all they did was send money to China, and it just felt so risky. And they actually, they closed on the business just as the pandemic hit. And they ended up with all sorts of money in the bank. Before they closed, they launched another business, a small one, an easy one to manage. And they had already gotten to 30 or 40 sales a day about 3 weeks prior to closing on this one. They didn't take any time off from one to the next. They did that sort of cycle of EXITpreneur, one after the other. But they were able to do it with knowing that there was going to be more money and growing it properly. Because there's just so much, as you say, risk associated with sending money overseas, or risk associated with any business that can get hit by competition, and just burnout, getting tired and moving on. These people that we work with, and what buyers say, why are they selling? It is because they don't want to take it to the next level. But we as entrepreneurs have an affliction that says, I can do that, which means that we have shiny objects syndrome. And we look at something that I can do that. Wow, that's exciting. I've been doing this for a while. I want to go over there and I want to do that. It's an issue. And we get a little bit better at managing that illness as we age and have more experience. But a lot of people are selling simply for that reason. And the earlier they can understand what to do and how to prepare their business for that eventual exit. If I want to be completely selfish, the easier it's going to be on me if I'm their advisor, right? If I want to go even further and be even selfish even more, 8,000 conversations in 9 years, one-on-one. I'm tired. So I wrote it all down. So another, 995,000 of you can read it. And then we can have a really, really healthy conversation about truly getting you maximum value for your business.
Folks, the future of the valuation call at Quiet Light Brokerage will be, thank you for emailing us, buy this book, right? And you're going to know the value of your business. No, I think having this is important for the purpose that being able to absorb some of this information in a format that's not a half an hour phone call, which we're still willing to do. Obviously, those phone calls are really important because we apply these concepts to your business individually to say, how do they apply? But being able to soak up the concepts, like you said, this is 14 years worth of knowledge built up over actual real live examples into this. It sounds like the people that will be interested in this book primarily are business owners who want to sell. Is that right? Or am I narrowing the audience?
You know what? That's who I wrote it for. But the more I kept rereading it, because, I didn't want all the typos that a buddy of mine has in his book. So I've read it 50 times. But the more I read it, the more I thought, my buddy knows who I'm talking about. So does Mark, people. It was for buyers, right? So if you think about, trying to gain instant equity, there are people out there. A lot of the audience members here are buyers. They're building a relationship with us. They're looking at our listings. They're connecting with us, and they are buyers. But they're also looking on their own. They're looking at other brokerage firms' listings. The book itself will give them the best possible understanding of what is missing in certain P&Ls, what should be there, what should have been an ad deck, what wasn't, how much instant equity they can gain, that type of thing. So I think if I was on the buying side, what you want to do is know everything your competition knows, which is your seller, right? You're negotiating against the seller. You want to know everything they know. So the book is really, I think, a secret special weapon for them if they want to get the best transaction value they can when they're buying, either again through an advisor or on their own.
Yeah, I know. Go ahead, please.
I want to say one of the things that I added at the very, I'll say last month, was a completely new chapter on what's happening with the aggregators and how to negotiate with them. If anyone in the audience has an FBA business, and by the way, the book is for online business owners. We talk content. We talk about SaaS. We talk about physical product businesses, all of that in the book. And when I say we, I mean all of my multiple personalities. Yes, Mark was probably thinking, who the hell's we? It's all
royal
it's all of the Joes in my head. But the aggregators, anybody that has an FBA business has probably heard from them. And if you want to sell on your own to them, have at it. Buy the book if you want everything that's in Mark's head and my head, and it will help you negotiate with them and get a much better value. But keep in mind that if you're going to sell to them, it's like going into Shark Tank. You're ready to pitch your wares and you show up and the only person there is Mr. Wonderful because everybody else called in sick. You're not going to get the best transaction unless you're presenting to all of the sharks and then all of the sharks' friends. And that's, the reason you want to definitely present to, what are there, 50 aggregators now? 60, something like that?
A new one every week.
Yeah, every week.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, we are coming up on time here, but I want to ask one last question. I think that hopefully people are thinking about when is the book coming out, and when can we expect to get it?
Yeah, it's the official launch date is June 15th, so about a week from when this airs. You can go to Amazon now and pre-order it. Just search for EXITpreneur on Amazon or the EXITpreneur's Playbook. You can also go to the EXITpreneur website, which is exitpreneur.io. There are free chapters available there. You drop that in and I'll shoot you an email when the book launches. We are going to give a special discount code when it launches. That's cheaper than the current pre-order rate on Amazon at the moment.
All right. So, and what was the date on that again?
June 15th.
June 15th. Fantastic. I'm excited for the launch. I think people are going to like this. When you send this out, it'll be in book format. For those that are watching on YouTube right now, I see it up in the upper left-hand corner for me of your screen there, the EXITpreneur's Playbook. There'll be a Kindle version. There we go. Nice and big.
I think I have to speak in order for it to show up, but there it is.
There it is. All right. So it'll be in print format. It'll be in Kindle format as well. Is that right?
Yeah. Kindle, paperback, hardcover. I have not done the audio version yet because of the pandemic. The studios were, backed up at least 6 months.
Can we get Walker to read the book, the Audible version?
Ooh, I like that idea.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
There we go. Fantastic. June 15th. We'll be putting it in our newsletter, in some of our email updates. So expect to hear those come out and see those. If you have not gone to exitpreneur.io, highly recommend doing so. Joe obviously knows a lot of the people listening here to us right now. Sign up for that announcement for when it comes out to get that discount code. I know the goal right now is to get this in the bestsellers as soon as it launches. And so we want to get as many orders for that as possible. This is a book that is designed to help both buyers and sellers and anyone interested in the acquisition space. So really, really excited for this book. Joe, thank you for coming on as a guest to my podcast.
It's such a pleasure to be here, Mark. You're a hell of a host.
Hey guys, if you haven't rated the podcast yet, please do. I think we're upwards of around 60 ratings now. I'd love to be able to get that up to 75. For those that have not rated the podcast, please take a moment, leave us a review. I don't know, leave us 3 stars if you think that we earned it. Leave us 5 if you really, really like us.
Silence. They're going, 3 or 5. What should I do? I totally agree. Yes. Yeah. If you enjoy listening, help us out. We don't ask for it. We never have up until a couple of months ago, and we start saying, please give us a ratings and a review. We greatly appreciate it. We read every single one.
Fantastic. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Mark.